All right, so we are back with part 2 of the Apocalypse tank. Last time we got this turret all built and done, so we're going to be moving on now. We're going to be working on the lower half of the vehicle. We've got the upper and the lower hull to do, so there's a little bit of each, and we'll work on them in separate parts. We've got a lot of running gear to assemble. We've got hull details. We've got, for no adequately explained reason, we've got a whole lot of wheels in 2 separate drivetrains. We've got front and rear tracks on both sides. I don't know why. It just looks cool, I guess. That's why we're doing it. But we'll get through all the assembly on both of those and all of the different deck details in this part of the video as we go. So let's make it happen. So we'll start off here on the bottom of the hull. We've got a lot of suspension arms and all sorts of pieces to put together for the running gear, so enjoy that. Now remember, this whole kit is designed to just basically be snapped together, press fit, to not need glue, but we're gluing it all together to make sure it stays together. For the most part, it does fit pretty well without glue. There are a few loose pieces here and there. Alright, so we are at the painting part. We've got a lot of wheels to do. We've got all this to do before we start building the upper surface, because, like I like to do with most of my vehicles, once we get this all assembled, it's going to be a little hard to get in here and do all the weathering and stuff. So, we do that first. I'm going to do most of the base painting and priming all at once, with some pretty standard, some Russian 4BO, Russian green, and the Vallejo primer. It's good primer, and it's the base paint color that we're going to use before we do highlights or anything like that. So I'm going to get started on this, and it's probably not going to be too exciting because it's green on green. If I was doing like a black primer, really satisfying to watch. But just the green, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to spray along the sides and all the suspension arms and all of our wheels and sprockets and return rollers and stuff, and we'll get that done, and then we'll start working on the tracks. Based on the color of the plastic, I think I'm just going to spray with some Alclad. Maybe I'll mix up a custom metal color. I'm gonna do all that, and you'll see this when it's all complete. I decided that I'm not going to do highlights in a slightly lighter mixed color. 4BO is pretty dark. Well, actually, I take that back. You know, there's different shades of 4BO. Because we're going to be doing so much, we're going to be doing weathering over here. We're going to be doing pigments. We're going to be doing, you know, some shading, panel, all this stuff. I'm just going to leave this alone. Same thing with the wheels. I was gonna paint some small highlights and stuff like that. But really, what's going to go on is I'm gonna do some panel liner. You know, we're gonna do some recessing, some darkening of the recesses, and then I'm still gonna have to paint. Oh, I hate painting road wheels. That is my absolute most hated chore of modeling, is painting the rubber on the road wheels. Now, I probably could have gotten away with the old Russian "we spray everything," but I'm not doing it. I'm going to paint the road wheels. So I'm just gonna do that. Now on the top, on the surface, you know, we're gonna do a little modulating, little shading, and lightning and panels and all that stuff. But that is that. So now I've got to get to work on doing the road wheels on all these. I decided I'm gonna do the tracks base color actually in the Vallejo metal colors and burnt iron. Number one, because it's acrylic, and you know, I just had it on hand that I wanted to do it. It's a you can barely tell the difference between the sprue, and that, but it's kind of you can spray it directly over plastic and it works pretty well. I forgot about it, honestly, but as a base track color, it'll work pretty well. And we can dry brush some lighter highlights on it. So many little wheels. So we've got wheels done, painted, very thin rubber on the road wheels, but you know, it is what it is. So I'm ready to do an acrylic coat, acrylic gloss, I should say, all along, so we can start weathering with enamels and such. We're going to stick with the tried and true aqua gloss. It's a good acrylic. We know that we can put enamels over it. You know, there's so many different things we could use, but I'm just going to give a nice light, medium maybe, coat all along the bottom, the sides, and the wheels, and the running gear, and the tracks. Not going to make you watch this time either. I'm just going to do it. I'll be back in a second. While we wait for things to dry, cure, and everything else on the lower hull portion, we might as well keep moving and start doing the buildup of all the things we have to add to the upper hull so we can get ready. One thing I decided I'm going to do towards the end is I'm going to fill in the hammer and sickle there. I'm going to finish this off in a more realistic Soviet style. I know that that's very stylized, you know, for game purposes. But I'm gonna go with some of the other more kind of game cartoonish features that the tank might have. I'm gonna fill that in with some putty and go without that. We'll use a decal, a standard, you know, Soviet Guards decal that will have the banner, the hammer, and the sickle, but I don't want that. So let me get going and we'll start adding on all of these topside features. Something else to remember about this is that Border Models wanted this to be able to just be assembled without painting if you wanted. That's why we have parts in so many different colors of plastic, which you see as we go along with this upper hull part. Just a note about these C6 parts. In the instructions, it almost makes it out to look like they're different pieces, Or maybe I'm just dumb, I don't know. They're all the same pieces, they're just shown at weird angles being installed. Something to take note of when you're building this model for yourself. Okay, so the instructions here say to attach the headlights, but that involves putting the LEDs through, and those are hardwired to the turret top. So we're going to save that for a little later, because then we'd basically be attaching the turret to the top of the hull, and I don't want to do that until we're ready later. We're going to do something cool and a little more realistic with these fuel drums later on. These spare track links, they're going to wait till the end too, just so they don't get sprayed over with green and have to get repainted all over again. So the plan with the tracks to replicate a tank that might have been driving around in the Soviet era, vehicles maintained by a poorly trained all-conscript army, we're going to start with a very rusty wash on these all-steel tracks, as we have seen Soviet vehicles used to sport. Then we'll go on to some other weathering techniques, but starting with this real rusty base does give a very realistic look for a Soviet-era tank. Here, I'm just adding a little bit of plain enamel thinner to help spread out the life of what I've already decanted from the bottle so as not to waste anything. It's Tester's brand. It doesn't matter if it's the odorless or not. It works fine. And so this blotting gives a little splotchy technique, adds a little 3D texture to the rust, makes it look pretty realistic. Don't worry, you won't be missing anything in the next few minutes. I won't use the dust wash, just the dark wash. Honestly, I think the dark wash was a mistake on such a dark green background. It's a little hard to see. I maybe even should have used just black or the dust, I don't know. These are precision tip cotton swabs, which I didn't even know existed until I accidentally found them on Amazon, but they are great for getting in around the small details and removing your excess wash. Once again, using plain old, not fancy Tester's enamel thinner to do my streaking with the compounds. It smells a little worse, but it's a lot cheaper than using the newer, fancier brands. Alright, so you will hardly see this splashed mud when it's all done behind and underneath everything else, but I like to do this step just so that when it's all set and done, I don't look and see any like big gaps in the weathering, environmentally as we're talking about, or anybody else for that matter. So this is just going to give us a base of some dried mud, older mud effects. When it's all dry, it dries glossy, but when we're all done, it'll be flat. And it just sort of gives a basis of the environmental weathering for everything else that we're about to do. There's a minimum of 27 pieces for each track buildup. And I'm going to call these semi-articulated tracks because they do have some flat, long pieces, but there's also some actual hinged track parts that work, that curve around different wheels and everything. So it's a real interesting buildup, and once you get the hang of it, very easy to build and good high-quality tracks. I enjoyed putting them together. They were kind of fun. when all the track work is done, it sits perfectly flat, nicely on the floor without the need for jigs or assistance or having to measure angles for the suspension arms or anything like that. And it took less than an hour for all the track assembly. So, with the track, suspension, wheels all done, we're just about ready to get to the main painting and weathering effort of this. So what I've done off camera, I filled in this hammer and sickle with some Vallejo Perfect plastic putty. That stuff shrinks as it dries, so you can see we've got to put another layer in there to really fill that in. I use the kit parts for the red and gray inlays over there. That'll all look fine when it's sanded, and I can just kind of recreate a little bit of this casted texture that's on there. All the effort with the tracks, and I just did the voiceover on the editing software, so I know that I've already said that, you know, this glossy look will have a matte look when we're finished, but I'm happy with where it's going. So what's next? Well, we've got the turret, and I gave a little bit of, you know, I had a little extra of the 4BO in the airbrush, so I started the paint on it a little bit, but we've got a few extra details to put on. If we're going to use that plow and those big, they look like guillotine blades, we'll throw them on there. We've got to do the headlights and you know, connect up there. But basically, you know, we're ready to do the painting on the rest of the hull and the rest of the turret, and then we can start the weathering process overall, where we'll do some pigments and some dirtying up of the tracks, the wheels. We'll paint and then do some modulation and some paint weathering effects on the top. We'll also do, you know, wash of the standard washes and pigment weathering and everything. I've got some ideas that I want to do where no Russian or Soviet tank has ever just had fuel drums out there without actual tubing to connect it to, you know, the fuel feed to the tank. So I think I'm going to have to scratch build that because I want that to actually be realistic. I'm a little worried about pressing this there we go, it'll come off. So I'll have to see how we can actually build that in and feed it from drum to drum to the tank itself. But I've got some stuff ordered. We'll see how that'll work out. But right now I'm pretty pleased with how things are going. So we're going to take a break here. I hope you've enjoyed watching the process. I'm having a lot of fun with this kit. So I hope that you will come back for, should just be one more part to this series, because this kit really does go together very nicely and easily. And then we'll get this guy all finished and marked up for a Soviet tank, group of Soviet forces in Germany, Cold War style. So thanks for joining me. Everybody out there building in YouTube land, keep building them well, and I'll see you again real soon on the next one.